Hi, I'm Josh Hutchinson, she's Sarah Jack, and this is Witch Hunt Podcast.
And we are descendants of the Salem witch trials and other New England witch trials.
My great something aunt, Elizabeth Morse of Newbury, Massachusetts, was accused of witchcraft in 1679 and convicted, but fortunately for her, she was given house arrest instead of an execution. However, my great, 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 great grandmother, Mary Esty, was not so fortunate. She was accused and convicted in the Salem witch trials and executed September 22nd, 1692, one of the final 8 victims of the Salem witch trials to face that fate. I also have ancestors who were on the other side. Some of my ancestors made accusations, some served on juries, and served as witnesses, so various capacities. And it's really very common if you have an ancestor who was a victim of a witch trial to also have ancestors who were on the other side of witch trials because they're from the same region. We're talking about a very small population in New England in the 17th century. So it's a lot of the same people overlapping. And these were friends and neighbors who were accusing each other.
I had a ninth great grandmother named Mary Hale who was tried in Boston in 1689. She was acquitted. Then her daughter and granddaughter, Winifred Benham and Winifred Benham Jr., were tried in Hartford. Fortunately, they were acquitted. I'm also the great, 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 great granddaughter of Rebecca Nurse and her sister Mary Esty. They were hanged in 1692 during the Salem witch trials.
Yes, Sarah and I are cousins through Mary Esty, along with our colleague Mary Bingham, who presents Minute with Mary in our regular episodes. She's also a Mary Esty descendant. And our ancestors who were part of early modern witch trials were just like us in many ways. They had the same hopes, fears, and community pressures that we experience today.
The tragedy that is in witch trials is there are no winners. Both accusers and accused suffer devastating consequences.
Everyone lost in these situations. Families were torn apart, communities fractured, and innocent lives ruined.
And here's something you may not realize. Because witch hunting was so prevalent throughout history, many of you listening right now are likely descendants from families touched by witch hunts.
Whether your ancestors were accusers, accused, or witnesses, these witch hunt stories are probably part of your own family history, even if those stories haven't been passed down.
These weren't just distant historical events. They're part of our shared ancestry, and understanding them helps us understand the world we share today. By the way, I almost forgot. Thank you for joining us for our final installment in our Ending Witch Hunt series for Podcasthon 2025, where podcasters are uniting for good and impact. Over 1,500 podcasters have been releasing special episodes March 15th through today, and they've used their platforms to simultaneously amplify causes and charities that are important to them. Learn more at podcasthon.org, and you will see our nonprofit and witch hunts featured with the other charities.
Your donations empower our nonprofit to shed light on forgotten historical witch trials through our extensive podcast series, preserving the stories of marginalized women whose voices were silenced.
Please consider supporting our educational mission with a contribution today. Every dollar helps us uncover and share these crucial historical narratives.
Today, we'll finish telling our story of witch hunts by sharing what we have discovered in the Americas.
And by the Americas, we don't just mean Salem. In our story, we're talking about an interconnected series of witch trials in New England and related trials throughout the Mid-Atlantic. But are you also aware that there are 35 sovereign states in the Americas, encompassing North and South America, as well as several dependent territories.
Today, we want to show the interconnectedness of the witch trials in the American colonies.
We'll also be covering a 2024 witch hunt in Haiti that culminated in the murders of about 200 people, most of them elderly.
You heard that right. Those murders occurred in December 2024, just a few months ago. This heartbreaking story is a reminder that witch hunts can be perpetrated in all corners of the world today.
Remember, witch hunts never went away, they simply changed form so that they are now largely carried out by individuals or mobs outside of any judicial system.
This violence has been part of life in the Americas and around the world for centuries. Just last year, a New York man went to a Connecticut beach and tried to drown his children because he believed that their mother was a witch.
Homemade exorcisms sometimes go off the rails too, resulting in injury or even death, often to young children or elderly.
I'm really excited to talk about Salem today. But first, I want to note that many witch trials took place in the American colonies long before the Salem witch trials of 1692 to 1693.
And those witch trials did not happen in isolation. In particular, witch trials along the Atlantic coast of North America, as well as in Bermuda, followed familiar patterns that had been established across the ocean in England.
The first witchcraft trials on lands which are now incorporated in the United States of America occurred 66 years before the Salem witch trials in 1626.
You heard that right. Witchcraft accusations are documented 66 years before Salem. That year, separate proceedings took place in courts nearly 2,000 miles apart from each other when witchcraft accusations were made in both New Mexico, in the American Southwest, and Virginia on the Atlantic coast.
More than 20 years passed between the first witch trial in Virginia and the first in New England. The trial of Alice Young took place in Hartford, Connecticut in May 1647, and she was hanged May 26, 1647, the first person hanged for witchcraft in British North America. She was finally acknowledged and absolved in 2023.
Her trial was quickly followed by a spate of trials in both Connecticut and Massachusetts, with victims also residing in what is now New Hampshire.
By the way, if we leave you hungry for more details today, our dedicated history episodes reveal seemingly bizarre accusations that turn neighbors into suspects and whispers into death sentences. Go download those now to discover the full, shocking stories.
I have a by the way, too. Witchcraft accusations were happening everywhere else in the world at the same time.
That is so true. Following the Connecticut case of Alice Young in 1647, 1648 saw the hanging of Mary Johnson in Hartford and the hanging of Margaret Jones in Boston.
The next four executions came in 1651 when Alice Lake was hanged in Boston, Goodwife Bassett was hanged in Stratford, Connecticut, and Joan and John Carrington were hanged in Hartford. By the way, Goodwife is not a first name.
Goodwife is a title, literally just means you're supposed to be a good wife. It was the counterpart of the male goodman, good man.
We don't know Goodwife Bassett's first name. It was omitted from the records.
Yeah, unfortunately. Another detail omitted from the record was the execution date for Elizabeth Gindle, who was hanged in Boston sometime between 1647 and 1651.
Then in 1653, Goodwife Knapp was hanged in Connecticut.
The following year, Lydia Gilbert was hanged in Hartford.
In 1655, the first witch trial acquittals happened in Connecticut and New Haven colonies, when Elizabeth Godman and Goodwife and Nicholas Bailey were pronounced innocent by their trial juries. This marked the beginning of a calm period in those colonies when nobody was executed for witchcraft until the Hartford witch panic broke out in 1662.
Unfortunately, the calm was a bit delayed in Massachusetts as Anne Hibbins was hanged for witchcraft in Boston in 1656.
However, after that execution, Massachusetts did not hang anyone for witchcraft for 32 years. Salem has not happened and will not happen for almost 40 more years. But isn't this already too much injustice? Yes, it was.
Witchcraft accusations did not completely go away during the calm periods, but juries and magistrates were less inclined to convict due to the difficulty in bringing in solid evidence of diabolical acts.
In Connecticut, the calm was disrupted when Governor John Winthrop Jr. traveled to London to obtain a royal charter for the colony.
While Winthrop was away, the Hartford witch panic broke out, resulting in accusations against 14 people and the executions of 4: Mary Sanford, Rebecca and Nathaniel Greensmith, and Mary Barnes in 1662 and 1663.
During the period we have covered so far, 1663, 11 people were hanged for witchcraft in Connecticut, and 4 were hanged for witchcraft in Massachusetts.
A generation passed before the next witchcraft execution took place in Boston, when Irish immigrant Goody Glover was hanged in 1688 for supposedly bewitching the beloved Goodwood children.
We have a great episode for you to listen to about Boston's beloved Goody Glover. Check it out by following the link in the show notes.
I like snow notes.
I do too. There are no snow notes, it's show notes.
After Goody Glover, only a couple more formal witchcraft accusations were made in New England before 1692, none of those resulting in convictions. And 1692, the Salem witch hunt began.
Here's the full story of the American colony witch trials history. Get ready. Goody Glover was the 16th person executed for witchcraft in New England during the 17th century and the last to be hanged for the crime before an epidemic of witchcraft accusations engulfed Salem and surrounding communities in 1692.
To understand the infamous Salem witch hunt, we need to honestly recognize the circumstances in which it happened.
Miranda Forsyth's wildfire analogy from the Papua New Guinea episodes tell us 2 elements are required for a witch hunt to develop.
First, there needs to be a conducive landscape which provides the fuel for the fire.
Secondly, some trigger event needs to spark the first flame.
For Salem, the conducive landscape consisted of a strong belief in witchcraft and the devil, a previous history of witchcraft accusations, social and economic anxieties, political instability, religious tensions and disputes, frontier anxieties and fear of the other, harsh environmental conditions, the influence of European witchcraft beliefs and panics, and a zero sum mindset.
Let me restate that perfect storm. Strong belief in witchcraft and the devil, previous history of witchcraft accusations, social and economic anxieties, political instability, religious tensions and disputes, frontier anxieties and fear of the other, harsh environmental conditions, influence of European witchcraft beliefs, and the zero-sum mindset. These conditions made New England ripe for a mass witch hunt, providing plenty of fuel by exacerbating stress, animosity, and fear.
The story of the Salem witch hunt is generally told beginning with the illnesses of Betty Paris and her cousin Abigail Williams, who were young girls in the minister's household in Salem Village in January 1692. They both lived in the Salem Village parsonage with Minister Samuel Paris, who was the father of Betty and was known as an uncle of Abigail Williams.
In late February, fun fact, it was a leap year, suspicions about the nature of the illness led by fear turned into accusations of witchcraft.
Englishwoman Mary Sibley, a near neighbor of the Paris family, instructed Tituba and John Indian, enslaved servants of Samuel Paris, to bake a so-called witch cake, which was prepared using flour and the urine of one or both of the girls.
The witch cake was fed to dogs. This process supposedly facilitated the identification of the witch who was harming the girls. Shortly after this experiment, Betty and Abigail named Tituba, the enslaved woman in the household, as their tormentor.
And one thing led to another, and the witch hunt grew and grew. And before it was all over, at least 156 people had formally been accused of witchcraft. 30 of these were convicted, 19 of them hanged, and one man was pressed to death for refusing to stand trial.
The trials have had a lasting impact in not just the New England region, but on the entire nation.
Now that we've set the Salem stage, enjoy our unmatched Salem podcast collection. Discover interviews with authors of your favorite Salem witchcraft books. Discover our ultimate Salem witch trials introduction and our essential Salem 101 series.
I know you will enjoy listening to our Salem themed collection as much as we have enjoyed building this resource.
Let's turn the page one more time and talk about witch trials in the American colonies immediately after Salem.
As I mentioned, my ancestor Winifred Benham and her daughter Winifred Jr. were tried for witchcraft in the Hartford court in 1697. That was after the Salem witch trials. But fortunately, their lives were spared as they were acquitted.
Their lives were spared, but like all those accused of witchcraft, their lives were forever changed.
This might surprise you. Vermont and Virginia each hosted American witch trials that time nearly forgot.
Both Margaret Krieger in Vermont and Grace Sherwood in Virginia were subjected to the water test, bound, and cast into local waters to determine their guilt.
Although records are extremely limited, we know both women lived through their ordeals.
These aren't just 18th century witch tales of Widow Krieger and the Witch of Pungo. They were real women who faced real persecution. I'm pleased to tell you their communities have since memorialized these women, acknowledging the injustices they faced so long ago. Even with all of this fabulous material in our mini episodes covering New England, Witch Hunt Podcast has just begun to tell the story.
You can look forward to many new episodes that will take us deeper into the story of Salem, Massachusetts, and Connecticut.
And episodes that will take us to Bermuda and across the Americas, and to the states of New York and Pennsylvania.
Today, we have given you an overview of witch hunting in the Americas.
For more detailed information, please check out our expert interviews and our 101 episodes. You'll find links to our playlists in the show notes.
And look for more upcoming episodes about the Americas in upcoming months.
We would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the possibly 200 or more victims of the recent witch hunt in Haiti that we mentioned earlier. Sadly, this incident spread like wildfire throughout this community.
As I've pointed out throughout our series, sickness and death commonly spark witchcraft accusations, and this was a tragic example of that pattern.
The child of a local gang leader became ill, and the father consulted a traditional healer for answers.
Like many cases illustrate, this healer vaguely blamed the child's condition on his own competition. Potentially, any of the other traditional healers in the community were the culprit.
When the child's condition worsened and he unfortunately died, the father, consumed by grief and rage, sent his followers on a murderous rampage.
They targeted healers in the vicinity and killed anyone attempting to protect them. Mostly elderly members of the community died.
This devastating event shows how patterns of blame and scapegoating continue into our modern world in the form of accusations of harmful witchcraft, with severe tragic consequences for families and communities.
Thank you for participating with us in Podcasthon 2025. We hope you have enjoyed this unique week of witch hunt content. If you're new to our podcast, please consider subscribing to our newsletter and the podcast wherever you are watching or listening. Then please share what you've enjoyed with your community by a social media mention or just talking about it.
Your donation helps our projects in big ways. Thank you.
Thank you for making Podcasthon 2025 a fun project for us, and please join us each Wednesday for new episodes about witch hunts.
Listen, have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.